Currently, one of the toughest teams to be a fan of has to be the Purdue Boilermakers. After seeing some decent success under Jeff Brohm and pulling off some really good upsets, Purdue has pretty much taken a free fall since he left for Louisville. The Ryan Walters hire was one of the worst in college football history, and so far through over half a season, the Barry Odom hire doesn't look much better. In today's video, I want to talk about Purdue football. Yesterday, they lost in an absolutely ridiculous way, and they are in a really bad spot right now, and honestly, I would say they are a dumpster fire. We're going to talk about the last couple of years at Purdue, my thoughts on the season so far, and what could potentially turn it around for them. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about Purdue football. For the third straight season, Purdue fans are turning their eyes towards basketball season, as currently the Boilers are the #1 preseason ranked team in college basketball and have a legit chance at winning a national title. Unfortunately, football is far from that, as over the last 3 years, it has just been horrible. After making the Big Ten championship and facing off with Michigan, Jeff Brohm decided to leave West Lafayette and head down to Louisville. He played at Trinity High School, was a quarterback for the Cardinals, and everyone knew he was always going to end up there. Brohm has done a tremendous job at Louisville so far and has them competing for a college football playoff appearance, but what he left behind is a program that is just struggling. Ahead of the 2023 season, Purdue decided to hire Illinois defensive coordinator Ryan Walters. He was an up-and-coming head coach, and many thought with how good his defense was, corresponding with the rise of Illinois, that he was a prime candidate to be a good head coach. Personally, I thought he should have started out at the MAC level instead of the Big Ten, but Purdue decided to take a risk and hire Walters. Unfortunately, that would end up biting them very badly. In 2023, the Boilers had some talented players on the roster like Dylan Thieneman, Devin Mockabee, and Deion Burks, but the quarterback play wasn't great with Hudson Card, and things just didn't mesh. The Walters era started out with a loss at home to Fresno State, but then they went on the road and beat Virginia Tech. That was honestly one of the best wins that Walters ever had, and was one of just 4 on the season. They would beat Illinois in late September, would beat Minnesota, and then knocked off Indiana in the Oak and Bucket game to finish the season. Unfortunately, Purdue had gone 4-8 with a 3-6 mark in the conference. But it was year one. Many expected them to get better in 2024, but that is not how things would go at all. In fact, the 2024 Purdue team is one of the worst Power 4 teams of all time, and they just didn't have anything going. Devin Mockabee was pretty much the lone bright spot on the team, Hudson Card regressed at quarterback, and Max Clare was a decent tight end. Dylan Thieneman also had a ton of tackles and became one of the top transfers in the country and is now at Oregon, but on the football field, they were horrendous. After beating Indiana State 49-0, the losing would begin. They had one of the worst losses in school history against Notre Dame, 66-7, and then got blown out by a bad Oregon State team. They then lost to Nebraska, got killed 52-6 by Wisconsin, before a weird game with Illinois. Backup quarterback Ryan Brown was thrown into being a starter, and he almost led them to a win. They lost by 1 in overtime, and were now 1-5. The Fire Walters chance wouldn't really start happening until the next week, though, as they got shut out 35-0 by Oregon. This was bad. At this point, the team was 1-6, and they had 5 games remaining. They first lost in overtime to Northwestern, then got shut out by Ohio State, got blown out by Penn State, and then lost to Michigan State. Now the Boilers were 1-10 with an 0-8 mark in the conference, and to make matters worse, their rival down south in Bloomington was now ranked inside the top 10, and if they could just beat them, would be in the playoff. Not only did IU beat Purdue, but they killed them. IU won 66-0, and Ryan Walters was fired pretty much immediately. There was definitely some interesting stuff that went on behind the scenes with Walters, but it was a perfect disaster. He was not a good head coach, he was above his pay grade, it's hard to win at Purdue, and they had a pretty tough schedule. The team ended up going 1-11, and then pretty much every good player from the team was picked off. Max Clare ended up going to Ohio State, Dylan Thieneman went to Oregon, Cole Brevard went to Texas, Jerron Tibbs went to Kansas State, and Jamal Edrin went to Virginia. The 2025 team would need to be a lot different, and they went out and got Barry Odom. Okay, so I'm a Mizzou fan first and foremost, but I also spent time at both IU and Purdue. I would say my allegiance definitely leans more towards IU, but again, my point with all this is that I've had the Barry Odom experience. He's not a bad coach, but he never recruited at a high level, he never won big games, and he just sort of had a bland personality. It's nothing against him, but Purdue fans thought this was going to be a home run hire. I said back when he was hired that I was skeptical, but everyone called me a hater or said I was biased. Personally, that is not the case, as I actually want to see Purdue be good at football, genuinely. I was at the Ohio State game in 2018, and the Brohm era was a lot of fun. They went out and got Barry Odom, who had just rebuilt UNLV, but again, I was skeptical. One of the first things that Odom did was go out and get a couple of new quarterbacks, as Ryan Brown decided to enter the transfer portal and go to North Carolina, but then return in the spring. They also got Malachi Singleton, who was a former 4-star recruit who was at Arkansas, plus they got E.J. Colson, who was a guy who played decent at UCF. They also grabbed a Washington State transfer, so there were 4 guys competing for reps. He managed to bring back Devin Mockabee, who had been a strong running back for him over the last couple of years, and then he brought in a couple of good receivers like Armand Branch, former Fort Wayne 4-star Nitro Tuggle, and then Michael Jackson and Corey Smith. Those guys were definitely supposed to help out a lot, and a player like George Burren should have stepped up at tight end. Manny Powell was going to be a guy who could lead the defense, and that's what he's done so far, and maybe, just maybe, Purdue could be decent this year. Honestly, in my opinion, at best they would be 6-6, but I did not expect them to make a bowl game. The schedule was just that hard. They'd opened up the season against Ball State, winning 31-0, but just like last year, it would be a flash in the pan. This time, instead of Notre Dame, they got Southern Illinois, and they won 34-17. They should have beaten the Salukis by a lot more, but through 2 games, Purdue fans saw some hope. This was already more wins than the 2024 season, and maybe they had something here. Instead, what followed has been another season of misery for them. The game against USC was somewhat competitive, but they ultimately could just never close the gap, losing 33-17. But the Trojans were good, that's what everyone said. They then went on the road to play against number 24 Notre Dame, and in a game that had some weird weather delays, they got beat 56-30. But this was also Notre Dame, they weren't expecting that. Against Illinois, Purdue's defense just was not able to get stops, but the offense was okay. That was one of the better performances of the season so far, but it just still was not enough. They ended up losing 43-27. Following that game, they played against the Minnesota Golden Gophers, who are notoriously the kryptonite of Jeff Brohm, and this game was sort of a death blow. After keeping it close, Ryan Brown eventually threw a pick 6, and they lost to the Gophers 27-20. The team was now 2-4 with an 0-3 mark in the conference, and they would desperately need to bounce back against Northwestern. Instead of bouncing back, they played their worst game of the season, as they got shut out 19-0. Again, on the channel I gave a lot of hate to Northwestern in the offseason, especially after week 1, but they are a decently coached football team, and they have had a solid year. Still though, getting shut out by Northwestern doesn't really sit well with fans or really anyone. No offense to the Cats. That was a horrible loss, but also Ryan Brown was hurt. This past weekend though was the one that absolutely skull-crushed them. After playing decently all game and giving themselves a chance to win, Rutgers would tie it up with a field goal. Purdue then had a chance to drive down the field and win the game and get their first conference win in 2 years. Ryan Brown's ball got tipped in the air, he caught it, and then he fumbled it. Rutgers was able to recover it and then kick a game-winning field goal and get out of West Lafayette. You could literally hear a pin drop in the stadium as Purdue just blew it. That was one of the most ridiculous ways to lose a game I have ever seen, and now currently the Boilers are 2-6 and are 0-5 in the conference. If it weren't for Southern Illinois, this season would be just as bad as last year's. It seems like no improvement has been made. Barry Odom doesn't really have a quarterback as Ryan Brown keeps making a lot of mistakes, and something is just wrong. Following the conclusion of this game, Purdue dropped its 14th straight Big Ten game and its 6th in a row since starting the season at 2-0. Despite a tough loss, Barry Odom spoke with confidence in his most recent press conference, saying he will propel Purdue to being a winning program someday. He said, quote, "We're building a winning football culture and the wins are going to come," Odom said. The last time Purdue has won a game in Big Ten play was November 25th of 2023, where they beat Indiana by 4. I think one of the worst parts about this for Purdue is the fact that the team down south in Indiana has done the opposite. IU is notoriously one of the worst programs in all of college football, but in their first year under a head coach, they made the playoff, and now in their second year, they're ranked number 2 and are headed for potential back-to-back playoff appearances with the 3rd highest paid head coach in the country. Indiana has completely flipped the script and went from a team that was pretty much nothing to now potentially a contender in the modern college football playoff era. Purdue is hoping to get that with Ryan Walters, and we're trying to go more stable with Barry Odom, but it looks like neither are going to work. The last 2 times Purdue had gone winless in the conference was 2013 under Darrell Hazell and in 1993 under Jim Coletto, and the last time they went winless 2 seasons in a row, never. Purdue's schedule does not get any easier as they face off with number 21 Michigan, number 1 Ohio State, number 2 Indiana, and at Washington, who's a good team. There is really no reason to think that they are going to be in any of those 4 games, and it really does look like Purdue's going to end up with a 2-10 season. This could legitimately be the worst stretch in Purdue football history, and the Boilers are a dumpster fire. I'm not sure if Barry Odom is the guy for the job. I think Purdue needs a better NIL system, and the losing culture just has to go. Hopefully things will change in 2026, but for now, I'm not optimistic. But what do you guys think? If you're a Purdue fan, what the heck has gone wrong with your Boilers? What do they have to do to improve? And what topic should I cover next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.